Let's talk about IPSO. You've had your run-ins with them. They make a judgment this weekend on Jeremy Clarkson, saying his piece was sexist.
Well, I don't know what it was. I think all of us would agree that he shouldn't have written it and that the Sun shouldn't have published it. But that's between them and him. What worries me about the case, and a very good piece by Fraser Nelson in the Telegraph over the weekend. What worries me about the case is that IPSO has become blatantly involved in the regulation of opinion, and also that it used to rely very much on individual complaints from the person affected. But on this occasion, the complaints came from pressure groups, which used not to be able to do this except in very specific circumstances. And I think it's a huge expansion of the power and role of a press regulator, which was actually set up to prevent excessive regulation of the press. And I think people should be very worried about it. I hope very much that IPSO withdraws this judgment, not because I defend what Jeremy Clarkson wrote, because I don't, or because I defend the Sun for publishing it, because I don't. But I think these should be private matters between the newspaper, its readers, and its writers, not regulated by somebody ultimately with the power to levy quite considerable fines.
And also, ultimately, as we know, in the current climate in which we live, the views of IPSO and the views of all sorts of organisations are not likely to be friendly towards, shall we say, outspoken columnists.
I don't want to be rude about IPSO. I mean, it does do quite a lot of straightforward, hard, detailed work to try and sort out factual inaccuracies. What they did to me last year was that they picked out a tiny glancing reference to, you remember face masks and the COVID business and the Danish mask study. I had actually, and a colleague of mine on the Mail on Sunday had actually written the only reports of the Danish mask study, which was the only proper, at that time, the only proper randomised controlled trial of the wearing of masks and professionals. No one else had covered it. And so we had actually done this. And a couple of weeks later, I made a glancing reference in a column item about something completely different, in which I said that the report had shown that masks were useless. And what IPSO said was that this was a claim of fact. I mean, you would never, in a report of a scientific study, use the word useless. It's not that kind of word. It's obviously comment. But they decided to treat it as a factual report and said it was inaccurate. And I said at the time that this was IPSO moving into the regulation of opinion. And I still think that's what it was and is. And I'm proposing, I have an entry in Who's Who. Now, no one's ever going to give me any kind of honour. It's obvious. The rest of absolutely OBEs, CBEs, KGBs, whatever. I'm not going to get one. So I'm trying to put in.
You don't want one, do you?
Trying to put in. Well, no, I don't. But what I'm trying to put in my Who's Who entry is censured by IPSO for COVID coverage, because it's the only honour I'm likely to get.
Well, you might remember back in the day when we used to talk right at the beginning. I used to see in all sorts of places, including Facebook, where we would post, say, our interview. And there would be some ridiculous kind of, notation in which it would say some of the claims in this article may be untrue. To which I was like, I'm sorry. You know, between us, we've got a reasonable amount of journalistic integrity and experience. And I thought, who are these dweebs in Sacramento kind of coming up with suggestions that we might be talking absolute and utter rubbish?
Yes, of course, the important thing about the verb may is that it can also, and often does, mean may not. If they said are untrue, then you'd be able to go and say, OK, Buster, show us what it is.
Exactly.
No, there is no...
But you can't talk to anybody there.
There is no journalist who's never made a mistake. We do it. Sometimes they're extraordinary that you just the pressure of time and everything else. I'm going to make excuses. We all make mistakes.
But as you said, much of what we discuss,
and they should be corrected. But this is not about making mistakes. This is about being able to express opinion without being regulated.
And much of our conversation was opinion.